the definitions we have to get clear is that when we talk about mythology and legend, we're talking about the spiritual foundation which supports and out of which the historical unfolding of the planet takes place. So we come back to the story of Isis and Osiris, which is the legendary story that's a preeminent one in the pharaonic wisdom, the ancient spiritual wisdom of ancient Egypt. And in that story, Osiris and Isis are married. Osiris is the guardian of the netherworld. Netherworld means the world between life and death. So his job is to weigh the souls of the departed to see whether they go to another land that's fraught with suffering and all sorts of disturbance which they have to work themselves through and face that, or to go to a land in which they are under the aegis of divine consciousness and they are becoming one with the source again. Because the idea of spiritual life is to become one with the source at the basis of it, to evolve into conscious oneness with the one. That's the basis of spiritual practice. So Isis is the goddess of wisdom. So she is the holder of the wisdom of that we are searching for in this life to bring life into unity. Seth is the brother of Osiris, and he's jealous of him, and he murders him. And in doing that, the first murder is he puts him in a coffin and floats him down the Nile. And he goes into the Mediterranean, and the coffin that he's in lands on the shores of Lebanon. Isis is home. She has the dinner waiting. Osiris doesn't show up. There's the full madamis, the pita, the hummus is on the table, but there's no one shows up. He doesn't write, he doesn't call, there's no texting, and he didn't email her. And so she gets concerned about his absence, and she finds out he's been murdered. She turns herself into a swallow, and she flies along the Mediterranean, and she finds the coffin on the shores of Lebanon. And in doing that, she alights and becomes Isis, opens the coffin, and finds the dead Osiris. She kisses him, and he's restored to life, and he becomes back to life. That's the story of resurrection, which is the basic point of the wisdom of the Western wisdom of the Mediterranean, which has its roots coming out of ancient Israel, the ancient Holy Land, and Christianity and Islam. So he comes back to Egypt with her, and Seth finds out, and he murders him again. And he this time cuts him up and dismembers him into 14 pieces, and he hides him in different parts of Egypt. And Isis again finds out that he's gone. So what does she do? She goes around Egypt, and she realizes and she knows that he's been cut up, so she collects the pieces. So she in recollecting the pieces and she puts them back together again. So she restores him back. She remembers him, which has to do with memory. She remembers him, and she remembers him both imaginally, in mental memory, and in physical memory. And in doing so, he comes back to life. That's the second legend of resurrection that comes out of Egypt. So remembrance has to do, and memory has to do with eternal life, or the ability to overcome death. It's in the Egyptian legend. It forms the basis of the wisdom. It's part of the wisdom of the West. It's connected to the ancient wisdom of the Holy Land and of the surrounding area and so on. So memory is a very big part of this, and such that we are then here to remember ourselves, that we have to remember our relationship to the source. And in doing that, we have to have imprinted in us the constant recollection of our connection to the source from which we've come. We get sidetracked in life, we get diverted, we are pushed away from it by the noise that surrounds us, we're taken off the path. So we have to come back to that original, to that primal memory of our relationship to where we've come from. And in doing that, we have certain practices that have been given to us to allow us to remember. can, through this particular kind of practice, change it and create a new imprint in memory of what the experience was that we were finding was inhibiting our lives. And these inhibiting experiences that we were finding that were derailing us were really belief systems that were organizing our life, of which there are one or two organizing beliefs that take place early in life, very early in your childhood. As you're growing up, they become the organizing beliefs of your life that around which you begin to focus on as the way to operate in the world, but they're essentially false beliefs that are stopping us from growth. So they're stopping our movement in life. So we have to remember ourselves in a new way. So the imprints that are there in memory get changed. Well, how do we change them? We remember something differently. Isis remembered Osiris differently. So she put him back together again and put the members of his body back together, the arms, the legs, held out the penile member because it had a great spiritual meaning to hold that out. And not to restore that, everything else was restored and he comes back to life. So there has to be a relationship between how you remember yourself and the movement of life. And those memories that are there in our experience, whether they're present in the present or come from us in the past that we recall, have to be changed in order to undo the blockage.